So as most of you know, and some may not, I was born and raised Methodist, but my mom was Jewish. And so we were raised Methodist. We were raised in a Methodist church. We acolyted just like Lily kind of did today. She was a little nervous about walking down the aisle, but we're going to keep working on it during youth group. I acolyted from the time when I was probably about 11 until the time I was 18, because in my church we had a cross that came down the aisle, and I was the one who could hold it nice and high, which is like what my pastors enjoy. I was in Christmas pageants. I sang in the choir. I rolled around on the floor under the pews. We had a nice hardwood floor just like we do in the church, and I used to crawl underneath and pull on people's pant legs as I was walking up. More than once, my mother went, "Jesse, where are you?" And I'd pop my head up 5 or 6 pews ahead of where we were sitting and caused quite a ruckus. Which is why I love having children in church, because it reminds me of myself. Church is boring, and I don't like to sit still either. So my mother was Jewish before she became a Methodist. She was Jewish even while we became Methodists. My grandparents were Jewish and never really attended temple, but celebrated the holidays. We went over to my grandparents' house for Passover. I think I've shared this story around Thanksgiving when my mother for Easter had to make both ham and turkey so we could have a goy side and well, I don't know what the other side would be called at this point, but it was an interesting upbringing, and today is the first night of Hanukkah, which has brought me to thinking about this and thinking about Hanukkah, especially where we are in our big God story. Last week we saw Ezra and the beginning of the rebuilding of the temple. And then what's not in our Bibles, but what's in some Bibles, a Bible at home I have is the book of Maccabees, which is a two-parter, and it details this in-between period. When after we rebuilt the temple, Alexander the Great came, laid waste to the Holy Land, laid waste to Jerusalem, desecrated the temple, put up a statue of Zeus in the middle of the temple, and then outlawed Judaism. And so eventually we have the Maccabean revolt, and the Maccabees come and they push off the Greek overthrowers, they push off all the oppression, they rebuild the temple, they rededicate the temple, and the story of Hanukkah is recorded in Maccabees. What happens is they come back into the temple, and the chief priest is looking for holy oil to light the lamps and can only find 1 day's worth of holy oil. It'll take 8 days for enough oil to be made so that way they can keep the lamps running. So they light the one day's worth, they light the oil, they start making holy oil again, and the Spirit of God comes, the miracle of God comes, and the oil is kept lit for 8 days. The 1 day's worth of oil is kept lit for 8 days and 8 nights, and this is the celebration of Hanukkah. A relatively minor holiday in Judaism. The big benefit of Hanukkah is that it falls close to Christmas and we get presents. So growing up, we celebrated Christmas. We had a Christmas tree. We lit our Advent wreath every Sunday dinner. We would sing our carols, and I'd be in the Christmas pageant. But for 8 days, we'd always celebrate Hanukkah. We'd light the candles on the menorah. We'd play dreidels, which is this little top that you spin. And we'd gamble with little chocolate coins called gelt. We would exchange presents, which was great for me as a little Methodist, because not only did I get all my presents from Santa on Christmas, I also got 8 more presents, usually the week before Christmas. And I got to brag to all of my friends in school. When I became an adult, one year, my mother, I wasn't going to be with her for Hanukkah, but I saw her a couple of weeks before, so she gave me a bag full of my Hanukkah presents for the year. I was about 20. It gets better. So she labeled them, numbers 1 through 8, and usually, especially for families, the first day is kind of your big present, and then the other 7 days are presents you need. They're socks, or pencils, or folders, or whatever. So this year I was 20, and I got this big bag, and I opened the first night of Hanukkah, and I looked at the bag and saw the other 7 presents waiting for me. And it was a lot like what's currently at my house and in the parsonage, my Christmas tree, which is full of wrapped presents under my tree that I can't help but look at and want to open really, really badly. So it turns out that year I did open all 8 presents in the beginning of the beginning of Hanukkah. And then when I called my mom, she goes, "So, what'd you get tonight?" And I went, "Today's the 3rd night of Hanukkah. I got erasers, Mom. Thank you for those." There were pens or something like that. "Thank you for those pens, Mom. I totally didn't open all 8 presents the first night of Hanukkah." So she doesn't give me bags of presents anymore. That's okay. I've been thinking about this almost but not yet, especially today, so close to Christmas. So close to Christmas. It's funny that we're still celebrating Advent. We're still lighting the Advent candle. We're still waiting for the coming of Jesus. And we know that on Tuesday night we're celebrating his birthday. Tuesday, it's Sunday. I've slept for longer periods of time than what we have to wait for Christmas. And so all Advent, and the reason why I was so heavy-handed with singing O Come, Emmanuel this morning, is that throughout Advent we've been singing this hymn. We've been singing this hymn and adding a week every week. We've been singing this hymn because we are longing for the coming of Jesus. We are longing to open those presents. We are longing and waiting and stuck in this almost but not yet. Stuck in this waiting period that we don't know what's going on yet. We're stuck with Israel. We're longing for the coming of the Messiah. We're longing for Jesus to be born. We're longing because the Roman Empire is upon them. We're longing and waiting for the coming of Jesus. And for us today in the 21st century, we're waiting for the second coming of Jesus. We're waiting for the time when the world will be changed into what Jesus told us it would become, that we would change the world into the kingdom of heaven. We are waiting and longing for that day. And that's why we keep singing, O come, Emmanuel. This old and ancient hymn based on older and more ancient antiphons, this explanation of our faith that is old and ancient and full of longing that we've been singing slowly and building on it every week. And I know Peggy didn't plan it, but I actually really enjoyed that we sang it a cappella for a couple of verses. Because that's what they would have done in the 9th and 10th and 11th centuries. They didn't have electronic organs back then. And after the 15th century, when the Reformation started, they probably burned a couple of those organs as well, that we sang it a cappella for most of our history. It wasn't until recently that we've had an organ to accompany us. So this ancient hymn, I think it's important for us to look at today because it speaks to that longing. It speaks to those presents under the tree. It speaks to the 8 presents that I got from my mother that I all opened on the first night. It speaks to the next 2 days that are going to fly by before we know it, but that we're still stuck in this almost but not yet place. I had a cough drop, so I'm chewing it because it's really hard to talk and use a cough drop. Yeah, and not swallow and choke. The first verse of O Come, Emmanuel, and if you want to look at your hymnals on page 211, I'm going to refer back and forth to the text a couple of times. The first verse says that Israel is mourning in exile, mourning in lonely exile and waiting until the Son of God appears. Waiting and begging and longing for the coming of Jesus. And when Karen read the text of John the Baptist, I'm reminded of in a couple of chapters when the priests and the Pharisees come to him in the desert and say, "Are you the Messiah? Are you the one that we've been waiting for? Is it you? You appeared out of the wilderness. You appeared out of nothing. Are you the Messiah? Are you the one who will come and save us?" They asked John the Baptist. We're longing for him to come. We're longing for the Messiah. We're longing for God to be with us, which is what Emmanuel stands for. God with us. God living with us, that the world will be changed in God's image. We're in exile, and so the hymn can be looked at in two kinds of ways. And boy, is my jacket uncomfortable today. Sorry, y'all. Yeah, thank you. Yep, my father would yell at me if he saw what I just did in my suit jacket. Ooh. I still gotta wear it for Port Colden, everyone. So, okay, we can look at O Come, Emmanuel in two very specific ways. The first three verses are Trinitarian. O come, Emmanuel. O come, thou wisdom from on high, and O come, great Lord of might. O come, the God the Son. Come, Jesus Christ. Come, the Holy Spirit. Wisdom. In the book of Proverbs, we saw that wisdom was a woman who embodied the Holy Spirit. O come, great Lord of might. O come, God the Father, who gave the law to Moses, who met Moses in a burning bush, who circled a mountain full of fire and smoke and gave us the Ten Commandments. It's the Godhead, and we want to be very specific in knowing that Jesus is part of God. That Jesus is the divine. He is the same as God the Father, the same one who gave us the Ten Commandments in heaven and gave us the Ten Commandments on Mount Horeb, that Jesus humbles himself and takes on human flesh purely so that way he can know what it means to be a human being. He knows what it means to wait. He knows what it means to look at those presents under the tree and really want to open them. He knows what it means possibly to lie to his mother and say that, no, I totally didn't open all 8 presents today. Jesus knew what it meant to be alive, because then when he teaches us, when he says there is a better way to live, we can believe him because he experienced life as we did. And then we have the next 4 verses, which are all other names for Jesus. We have the root of Jesse's tree. Remember the stump outside of the Franklin Township Municipal Building, that tree that had been cut off because of the power company, and now all these branches are shooting off of it. This ugly, awful looking tree, but out of one of those branches, fruit will come. The key of David that unlocks doors that no one will be able to lock again, that locks a door that no one will be able to unlock. The day spring, the new light, the new dawn, the new season, the heat and the light and the brightness that we need to sustain our lives. O come, thou desire of nation, King of the Gentiles, the antiphon reads, available not just to Israel, not just to the Jews, but to the exile, to us today. Jesus is available and King, and the one who will lead all the nations, who will bring peace to a world at war, peace to a world at violence, peace, this total, altogether wonderful peace that will go on forever. O come, Emmanuel is a hymn that places all of our understanding of Jesus Christ, all of our understanding of God's big promise. We hear the bells again. Hey, Tierney. Oh, score, she's got something. This hymn that puts all of our understanding of Jesus Christ in one very short, I know 7 verses seems quite long, but one very short hymn that explains our Christology, that explains who Jesus Christ is more than any other. And then there's the refrain, the chorus line, that deep breath, and then the really sad part of the song, the part that goes, rejoice, rejoice. Emmanuel will come to thee, O Israel. And it's one of those weird verses that I love, and again, why I made you all sing it 7 times. Because the text is so wonderful and so beautiful and so joyful and peaceful, but the tune is so sad and foreboding. Dr. Mary Berry, she's an English musicologist. I can't believe that's her actual name. She's an expert on Gregorian chants. Dr. Berry was doing research in a book of funeral songs from the 15th century. So the Catholic Church, they had hymn books, kind of how we would understand them. From the 15th century, there were songs and hymns that were used for funerals, and she found in one of the pages, she says she turned the page of this book, and there on the right side was O come, Emmanuel, the exact same tune that we sing there in a funeral book, which makes sense. Let's see if I can do this solo. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. That would be sung, chanted around funerals, chanted around bodies. It's this sad tune that has beautiful, wonderful words. It's this dichotomy. It's this in-between, the almost but not yet situation that we're waiting for. The joy that we know that Jesus is coming on Christmas. 2 short days. I am like a little kid in a candy store. Which is funny because on Saturday I was in a candy store and was like a little kid in a candy store. I bought more candy. Never mind. It's this almost but not yet, this longing that Jesus is coming, but he's not here yet. Why hasn't the world been reshaped in his image? Why haven't we been able to stop the sickness or the disease or the death? Why is there so violence and war and terror? We're at an almost but not altogether peace. The presents are wrapped, but we haven't unwrapped them yet. And what I think the best part of O Come, Emmanuel is, the reason why we've been singing it every week is how different it is from songs of Christmas. From songs like Joy to the World or songs like O Come All Ye Faithful. Songs that lift us up, that tell us that God has fulfilled God's promise to us. That the peace that we've been waiting for has arrived. On Christmas Eve, our hymns change completely. No longer are we in a sense of foreboding and longing. No longer are we singing a funeral hymn. Instead, we're singing songs like, "Oh, come all ye faithful." And on Christmas Eve, if you're here on Tuesday, 4:30, that's the hymn we're going to be looking at in my message. We're going to see how this story is fulfilled, see how God keeps his promise, how Israel is ransomed by Emmanuel, that God who will be with us. There's only 2 more days of waiting for his birth, 2 more days of your waiting in exile, 2 more days of hoping and praying for a peace, of calling out to a God, of sitting and looking at our Christmas tree full of unwrapped presents. 3 days. Unless Santa's coming, then you don't see any presents. Because once he is born, once those bells ring on Christmas morning, once Jesus Christ is born in that manger to that family, once the sheep and the shepherds come out from their flocks and come out from the field at night, once he is here, Jesus will lead us. He will lead the nations. He will rule our lives. He will teach us and build us into the people we're supposed to be. He will save us from ourselves, save us so that we can rebuild the world in his image. Until that morning, until Christmas Day, until we wake up and unwrap all those presents that Santa brought us, Tierney, I think we can keep that refrain from O come, Emmanuel in our minds and in our hearts. I think we need to embody it, to remember that Emmanuel, that God will be with us. Because once he is born, once he comes back for the second time, the world will completely change. That's what we're longing for this Advent. That's what we're waiting for on Christmas. For God to come and change us and change the world and change the world through us. God is coming for us. That's why we sing. That's why we're longing. That's why we pray. Rejoice. Rejoice. Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Amen.